and welcome to America in Focus, powered by the Center Square. I'm Dan McCaleb, Chief Content Officer at Franklin News Foundation, publisher of the Center Square Newswire service. Confirmation hearings began this week in the U.S. Senate for a number of President-elect Donald Trump's cabinet picks. Secretary of Defense nominee Pete Hegseth, Attorney General nominee Pam Bondi, and others faced tough questioning from Democrats at the U.S. Capitol. Joining me to discuss this today is Casey Harper, Washington, D.C. Bureau Chief for the Center Square. Casey, much of the tough questioning is more political theater than anything substantive. How do you think Trump's nominees have held up so far?
I think they've done surprisingly well, actually, Dan. There's been a lot of hullabaloo, a lot of media firestorm around some of his nominees when he first announced them before Christmas. But it seemed that Trump just rode out the storm. I mean, he was pressured to withdraw some of those nominees. You mentioned Hegseth. Hegseth took some fire. He's faced some allegations. The only one who didn't ride out the storm, of course, was Matt Gaetz, the pick to be Attorney General. It just was too strong. And Trump, eventually Gaetz withdrew his own name. Who knows what pressure was behind the scenes to make him do that or not. But that pick didn't survive. But there's this kind of sense in D.C., Dan, that if the nominees can get past that initial wave of criticism, then there's a good chance they're going to get nominated. And I think that's really what's happening here. Some of the nominees were pretty solid, and all they had to do was not make a mistake. Doug Burgum for Interior, Lee Zeldin for EPA, who's, kicked off their confirmation hearings this week. They were pretty solid choices, and they just had to not say anything ridiculous. And so I think they have a really good chance of getting confirmed. Then there was the more controversial picks. You mentioned Pam Bondi and Pete Hegseth. They were facing a lot more skepticism from the Senate. And they had to face a lot of tough questions this week in their hearings. But by many accounts, they really knocked it out of the park. They were sharp. They took some very hard questions and answered them well. I mean, I think that if Hegseth or Bondi had done poorly in these hearings, it could have been over for them. But they both performed really well. I mean, and that was, that's not just my analysis. That was kind of a consensus. So I think that they both have a good chance. And one thing to look at here is apparently Joni Ernst in the Senate has said she will vote for Pete Hegseth, which is huge for him. She was a potential Republican holdout that could have sunk Hegseth's chances. But with her support, I think Pete has a good chance of getting the position.
Yes. So with the Republicans have just the smallest majorities in the U.S. Senate. Any defectors could sabotage Trump's nominees. But I agree with you. The Hegseth hearings from this week, he was grilled, not just on, his experience and qualification for the job, on his personal issues from his past issues with alcohol, accused of sexual assault, never charged with the crime, but there were allegations about it. But he stood his ground, I thought. I don't see how any of the folks who went through confirmation hearings this week are not confirmed. I could be wrong. You don't know until the votes happen. And then Pam Bondi, who, as you mentioned, replaced Matt Gaetz as Trump's Attorney General nomination. She was grilled on a number of her policy positions in the past, but she also held up pretty strong. I think Kristi Noem is up today for Department of Homeland Security, replacing Alejandro Mayorkas, who underwent a controversial 4-year term in the Biden administration because of the ongoing border crisis. Noem's hearing in a Senate committee is today. What do you expect there?
Yeah, I mean, because this is such a big issue, the border for Trump, I think Democrats are going to be pretty aggressive on this one. I think they're going to want to know, some questions we've seen already is if Trump orders you to do something that disobeys the Constitution, will you stand up to him? It's kind of a funny question, but that's one Democrats have liked to throw out there so far. I think they're also going to want to know, how are you going to protect children? And they're going to ask about family separation policy, and basically the detainment or separation of children at the border. Now, Trump gets a lot of blame for this, even though Obama, enacted similar policies, the kids in cages, the whole line surrounding that. So I think she's going to have to do some apologetics for the Trump administration on those policies. But I think, again, if Hegseth and Bondi seem like they're making it through, Noem is doing just fine, I think, unless she, has some big faux pas today. And I think what's interesting, we're just in this new era of nominees and Senate hearings. I think ever since Brett Kavanaugh, of course, years ago, faced he for the Supreme Court, he faced all those allegations. He seemed possibly like he was, dead in the water. And there was this uprising and this kind of defiance, and it reset the parameters on what it takes to get someone out of a Senate confirmation hearing. Because before Kavanaugh, really it just took some bad media reports and some quote unquote controversy to have your confirmation pulled. But ever since Kavanaugh, it's been a much different battle. In the Trump world, when they're really pushing for someone, these senators have to have a good reason, especially Republican senators. They face a lot of pressure to confirm these MAGA picks. And, I think that Noem, as long as she doesn't, slip up too much, she's going to be okay.
Among the least contentious hearings from this week, Casey, was that of U.S. Senator Marco Rubio, nominated to be U.S. Secretary of State. He seems like he's got a clear path to be confirmed, not anywhere near as hard of questioning from Democrats in that hearing.
Yeah, I mean, Rubio is well liked in the Senate. He's seen as more moderate than Trump, and he really is an expert on the issues he was chosen to be a part of. I mean, he's been working on foreign policy issues for a long time. He is an expert. He's done a lot on China. And one thing that the Democratic senators wanted to hear from Rubio, and he gave to them, was that he would seek concessions from Russia. There's this fear among Democrats that Trump will be so hurried to end the Russia-Ukraine war that he'll just give Russia whatever it wants. And Rubio, I think, put some of those fears at ease when he said he will seek concessions, that basically telegraphing that Russia is not just going to get the whole farm when this ceasefire is negotiated. Now, how much that's really true and how much Rubio is going to be able to pull that off, of course, no one will know until it happens. But I think that eased a lot of Democrats' concerns, and I agree with you that he seems on track to get the job.
Thank you for joining us today, Casey. Listeners can keep up with all things confirmation process at thecentersquare.com.